Joe Biden received a record-breaking amount of donations from anonymous donors and outside groups backing him, this according to Bloomberg News. The then candidate took in $145 million in so-called dark money donations, while his rival, former President Trump, took in $28.4 million. This could mean the public may never know all the names of the folks who donated to President Biden's victory. Now, one of the most prominent Democratic super PACs supporting Biden, Priorities USA Action, allegedly used $26 million in funds originally donated from Priorities USA. Priorities USA is a nonprofit. Bloomberg claims this means that the donors don't actually have to be disclosed, so we don't know who these folks are. Now, you may recall that Democrats introduced legislation in the past to crack down on these same kinds of dark money donations. Let's talk about this and welcome in Benny Johnson, Chief Creative Officer at Turning Point USA. Also a reminder, you can catch Benny every weekend here on Newsmax TV for the Benny Report, and Kristen Tate back with us as well, author of The Liberal Invasion of Red State America. So, Kristen, you know, this is often one of those storylines in the media that's overlooked because the dominant media narrative is that the Republicans get all this dark money and they're up to no good. But in reality, election cycle after election cycle, whether it's money from the unions or dark money donations in this case, they're really the ones who dominate this aspect of political giving.
Of course, and this is just another example of Democrats being hypocrites. I mean, they say they want to ban charter schools for low-income students, yet they send their own children to fancy private schools in limos. They say that walls at the southern border don't work, but they build huge walls around their own mansions and federal buildings where they work. They say that we need to defund the police, and yet they have their own private security. And they say that if we leave our houses to do anything, we will get COVID. And it will be very dangerous, and yet they have no problem going to fancy restaurants like French Laundry with big groups of their own friends unmasked. I mean, these people are total hypocrites. And John, I think a lot of the American people are starting to wake up and realize that.
Yeah, and even the Supreme Court earlier this week, Benny, we saw the Supreme Court toss out this emoluments clause lawsuit that got so much attention from outlets like CNN. But here, you know, I have a clear example. Joe Biden takes in $145 million in dark money compared to the Trump campaign at just $28 million. I mean, who's the shadier one here if you're taking in more dark money?
Yeah, it's really shady, and it was a wonderful point right there about the walls in Washington, D.C. I live and work in Washington, D.C. I could not do my Newsmax show last week in Washington, D.C. because there was a massive wall erected by Democrats to protect Democrats. That wall was the wall of Donald Trump's dreams. Donald Trump goes to bed, puts on his nightcap, and dreams about a wall this beautiful on the southern border. It had razor wire on it. It was 12 feet tall. It had cement barriers and armed men standing at it. So they are absolutely the party of hypocrisy, and also they're the party of the rich, the elite, and the disconnected from reality. That showed in the 2020 election when Donald Trump won virtually all working class and rural counties and America's poorest counties, and Joe Biden swept the board with America's most richest and most educated counties. The Democratic Party is indeed utterly abandoned the working class, abandoned union labor, as you can see with the recent orders from the president's desk. And the Republican Party is becoming the party of the muscular class, the working class, and the regular American. I think that indeed is a very positive thing, actually.
Yeah, and in terms of that wall that was erected around the Capitol, I actually did get some information from a source, and that is the reason why Chuck Schumer had that gaffe last week on the floor of the Senate. It's because the wall that was erected, not for other reasons. Of course, that's a joke. All right, so let's talk, guys, about what's going on over in the Army. Some changes taking place as well. Army ready to let their hair down. They just unveiled new rules that will allow ponytails, earrings, hair highlights, dyes, nail polish for female soldiers, but male soldiers will still have to keep their hair short, of course. Does this help the military? Guys, what do you think?
No, this is just more virtue signaling from the left. I mean, this is ridiculous. The military exists to keep our country safe. And I also want to point out, I don't think Donald Trump gets enough credit. He was the first president in my lifetime to not start any new wars. He campaigned heavily on bringing the troops home, and he was pretty successful at doing that. And now under Biden, we are going to have another military state. We're going to have to police the globe again and send our hard-earned tax dollars halfway around the world for these initiatives that usually end up in failure. So all of these virtue signaling, mandates, these new rules, it's just a distraction from what's really happening, which is just a return to policing the globe.
Yeah, and if ponytails and nail polish can prevent another war, I will fully back that policy, but I don't think that's what's going to happen here. And Benny, I wanted to give you a shout out too, because I was watching your show last weekend and I couldn't help but laugh out loud when I saw this right here.
Terrifying as it might sound, the military is now under direct control of Joe Biden, the guy who said he would mobilize true international pressure.
Well, we're not going to hear the Biden clip there, but I don't think we actually have to, because, Benny, if they need a guy to impersonate Biden on Saturday Night Live, I think you could give whoever the guy is now a run for his money.
I mean, yes. I mean, absolutely. Wait until the military finds out that the ponytailed nail polish brigade is going to be mobilized, and that brigade is called the True National Pressure Brigade. Joe Biden, 47 years in politics, he really understands our military-industrial complex and all of the special operations that he can mobilize. And that's one of the scariest ones. They show up with their ponytails, they show up with their nail polish on. Boy, Americans and America's enemies, they shake in their boots, they surrender instantly. You do not want him to mobilize the true international pressure on you.
Well, kudos to my producers, because I have it in the prompter here. They put the verbatim of the soundbite here, and it's spelled out. And it looks like a word you'd see, I think, in Wales. If anyone knows the Welsh language, it's kind of a wild one.
If I could say to close there, John, the number one thing you can do for troops to show that you support troops, and I know Chris is going to agree with me, the number one thing you do to prove that you support our troops is not to send them into more pointless wars, into harm's way. That is the number one way that you could say you support the troops. That's how you do it.
And that's something President Trump tried to do on his way out the office. But of course, a lot of GOP senators we're not into that. All right, let's also talk, too, about cancel culture coming for Major League Baseball. No one's going to Cooperstown this year. The Hall of Fame voters snubbing Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and our friend Curt Schilling. Schilling was just 16 votes shy of getting in. He joined Wake Up America here on Newsmax TV earlier today. Here he is.
This is not about picking the best players that ever played the game. I'm going to throw a couple numbers, statistics at you for you to chew on. 85% of sports editors are white. 82% of reporters are white. 80% of columnists are white in the sports market. 90% are male. It's a white, male, liberal, college-educated group of men passing judgment on me.
That was Schilling. Of course, you know, what is it, the Hall of Fame? Or is it for baseball players or for your character? Who knows? But you can catch that full interview up on Newsmax.com as well. Kristen and Benny, we're going to say
there is nothing worse than snuggling.
You just watch.